Welcome. We'll begin momentarily. Please welcome. Please welcome your MC for the 2022 ARCOS Conference, Miss Danny Hayes.
Oh, yay! Thank you, 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 thank you. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce the next three gentlemen that are going to come up on stage and talk about resource sharing. Bill Brackett is our Vice President of Platform Strategy Resource Management. Jason Singer, who you heard from a lot in the last session, is our Director of Resource Management Services. And Jim Nowak is our Senior Director, Operational Products and Services.
I'm going to stand off to the side while you go. Thank you, Danny.
Clickers behind him.
Thank you for joining us, and thanks for coming back after a break and a great roadmap presentation. I think you're going to be excited by tomorrow's roadmap presentation, where we get even further into the future. Before we start this session, I'm going to transition into this with maybe a couple questions and a couple quick impromptu surveys. Question number one is, how many people here have engaged with the ARCOS Idea Bank? I know we talked about that, but how many by show of hands? Okay, great. That's great. I love to see that, actually, because what we're going to do on Wednesday morning, Matt and I are going to do a session where we're going to read out some of your Idea Bank entries and discuss them live on the stage, so kind of like a product review session that's live in front of everybody, and we're going to get deep. So throw us your tough curveballs throughout the rest of the conference, and you may get a chance to see them on Wednesday morning being discussed live. So thank you. Next thing I'd like to discuss quickly is, I think it was Patrick McCullough from Jackson EMC. Is Patrick still in the back there? Okay, we may have lost Patrick. He mentioned in the last session, why would anyone want to use Crew Manager during a blue sky day? So another show of hands, how many folks here have a crew ready room or some central location at the dock every morning where crews gather to receive work packets, do safety briefs? Show of hands on that. Okay, great. And how many folks use contractors as part of that process today? Okay, almost the same number. Great. And this is a curveball. How many folks would like to get more productivity out of that whole process? Okay, yeah. So that's great. So not a curveball, softball. So thanks for hitting it. That is why you would want to use Crew Manager during a blue sky day, and that is how Crew Manager and the contractor workforce relates to this topic. Do I have the flipper? There we go. Great. So to start off, I'm going to do some more detailed introductions. First, start off with Jason here. Jason, as Danny mentioned, is our Director of Resource Management Services. And Jason's been working on resource management challenges and resource sharing as long as I have at ARCOS. I've been at ARCOS for a long time, and Jason's been working on it. This is a second company working on the same type of challenges. In addition to Director of Resource Management Services, Jason is also the Product Manager for Resource Assistant Crew Manager. And then Jim, all of you know Jim. Jim is our Junior Director of Operational Products and Services. And as many of you know, he spent 37 years at AEP coordinating multi-state responses, storm responses, also running operations for a region or district, I believe, and brings a ton of great experience to ARCOS, and I lean on Jim all the time. Right now, you may be more used to seeing Jim interacting with you as part of his role in customer success. So Jim has some of you as customer success assigned customers, and he's been basically tasked to make sure you get the most out of your investment in ARCOS. We're going to take you today through this agenda in 4 parts. First, we're going to start off a little bit with a little brief history. It won't be too torturous, I hope, but where we came from in terms of resource sharing as an industry, the recent past, the last few years, and we're going to pivot to now and the future. And as Matt was talking about, we're going to leave you with a little bit of the exciting future we have ahead of us around resource sharing and some of the things we call hypotheses or concepts about where we can take the ARCOS platform. So first, I'm going to hand this off to Jim, and he's going to get us started with the history of resource sharing.
Thank you, Bill. And Bill didn't talk about himself. He's that kind of guy.
Oh,
but,
thank you.
He was my boss since I started with ARCOS till recently, but he's been over a lot of different departments. I think, as everybody knows, he's been over the PS group, the support group. He was over product briefly for a while as we were making a transition to Matt and his team, and then also customer success, and then he handed it off to Arjun, my present boss. So a little bit about Bill, and great mentor, and appreciate all his help. So, first of all, I want to just give you a brief history, and probably everybody in this room knows about the history of mutual assistance in what I'll call the RMAGs, or the different groups. But the Edison Electrical Institute, the American Public Power Association, and the National Rural Electric Cooperative Association, they're basically trade groups for the utilities. They cover all three types of utilities: investor-owned, APPA, as well as your co-ops. If you look in here, I'm just showing that one was established 1933, 1940, 1942. Well, what about these groups? Number one, they don't compete. Actually, inside the groups, they don't compete. We don't compete with each other here. I can't remember who mentioned it this morning during the general session, may have been Bruce, but we're partners in this. So it's best for us to work together, because we all know if it hits somebody in a state and they respond poorly, it's going to affect you somehow. So with that, I'd like to talk about they don't compete, they work as a partnership. Another thing is that if you look at when these were all established, it was quite some time ago, all around the same time. I wasn't born yet, so you may think I'm old, but you're not quite. Now, the mutual assistance agreements I have up there, the dates are fairly close, but I could be off. There were some forms of mutual assistance agreements, but this is at the high level, at the national level. You may have had some within individual states and so on. And, eventually, all of those groups got together and they agreed to a formal process. So, and here we have, again, the three groups, and I want to talk about how they developed their national response plan. So what they had is they all had some type of guideline or process, some type of agreement, but really they somewhat formalized it. They had some documentation on it, but what happened after Superstorm Sandy really changed the whole industry. Many of the industries got together. EEI formed a group, and it created the NRE. APPA also formed a group, and so did the NRECA. During that whole process, they all came together and talked and says, we're going to work together so that if an event hits, we talk at a higher level and see what's going on. Make sure that resources are shared if need be, and that they're adequately and fairly and equitably allocated. So these groups all worked together. They were really working after Sandy. Sandy prompted them to go that route. And I was fortunate to be involved in one with the EEI, and it really helped us as an organization, as the whole industry, to get better and learn how to share. And that's what we're here talking in our session today, about how we share those resources. So this next slide, it's only two of the three maps, but the one on the left, it represents the regional mutual assistance groups under EEI. Just so you know that they aren't that tight. I'll just let everybody know, and I'm pretty sure everybody does know, they overlap. But we had to draw a line somewhere because I wasn't good at art and I couldn't make them hashed and all that stuff. So that's the IOUs. On the right side, you have the APPA, and they're aligned just like the FEMA districts. So you can look at them and they're perfectly aligned. And then for those that are in the APPA organization, if I say this wrong, please correct me later, not in front of the crowd. I don't take criticism well. No. They basically go up through their individual regions for looking for help. If it gets beyond that, then they can look to the national level for some assistance. There's some little changes or nuances in there, but that's basically what they do. And then the NRECA, they work by state typically. So they're structured into the individual states, and they work through that state, and then at the national level if they need assistance. So with that, I'm just a high level about the mutual assistance organization within the United States, realizing that underneath all these, there are other groups that represent individual RMAGs, different FEMA districts for APPA. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bill. Pass it back. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. So when we got together and we decided this was our topic for our presentation and decided we were going to do kind of an arc of where we came from, where we are, and where we're headed around resource sharing, I got really excited because it let me go back through all my old ARCOS Conference slide decks. Some of you, Ann, SCG&E, Bubba, AEP, Patrick, SoCo, you may recognize some of these slides back from those days. So I'm going to take us back in ARCOS world to when we first started to tackle and we first started to hear from you about the resource sharing challenges you all had. First of all, we developed Crew Manager, and as part of the story, we were really quickly told by you that Crew Manager is part of the challenge of Crew Manager is these external resources. Some of you use them in blue sky days. Some of you have significant parts of your workforce being used during blue sky days from a contractor perspective, but also during storm and dark sky days. So back from 2012, your feedback to ARCOS ended up in the 2013 conference survey. In 2013, we ranked your responses, and it was the sixth highest vote getter from that conference. We also started to get exciting and challenging questions from you all about how we could expand resource sharing within the ARCOS platform. And in fact, I don't know if you can't read it, but kind of halfway down on the right side there, Progress Energy, now part of Duke Energy, I was doing a presentation like this, and I got off the stage, and a gentleman from Progress Energy said, hey, if you're looking at Crew Manager, why can't every single line resource in the Southeast US be in a system like this? Because we use them all the time. This great, challenging question, right? So those are the kind of things that led us down this road for resource sharing. And that really led to this, just beautiful slide deck. Notice the highly sophisticated and stunning diagram done by yours truly. And I heard a couple chuckles, which is good, because I thought I'm going to put a laughing emoji on here, and that's my insurance policy for my joke slide. But seriously, this was the concept, right? Very basic. A couple of utilities, a web portal, and basically a standard roster. That brings us to 2014. So 2014, our thinking had progressed along with you. A few key features here that we're still using today, standards being enforced. These roster standards, Jason's going to talk a lot more about that, and you all have helped with that. It's been an industry effort outside of ARCOS, so we listened. The concept of really a contractor database that's outside of each and every environment that you all have with ARCOS, but a standalone database and portal that contractors can access and use on their own. Key concepts that we're still using. And Jason, I mentioned in my introduction, Jason's been working on this for a long time, and even in his previous company, he was working on resources on demand and thinking about the same thing. For resources on demand, which is really a dark sky or storm only application, it started as an empty shell, so the same challenges existed. How do I get my employees into that? How do I get my contract? How do I get my mutual aid employees into that system? And what Jason and his team started to work on was a concept they called at the time CRX. And it was a project, this is a kind of a white paper they put out, really around a portal-based exchange. So great minds think alike. I was super excited when Jason came on board with ARCOS and we were able to pair our work up and release Resource Assist. So fast forwarding to the end of 2017, you can see a slide deck here with a formal launch in October of 2017. So happy to have many of you jumping on board, and Jason's going to talk about the great growth we've seen over the last couple years with Resource Assist in terms of participation. We focused first in that first release of Resource Assist on that request and response handshake. So the first thing we wanted to get right was this panic situation of, oh no, I need resources, and let me make one request, for example, and let many people fulfill that request. And so we wanted to make sure we got that right. Those are some of the themes we focused on in that first release. We then wanted to follow on with some of the same themes you saw before. Same format, so standard roster template formats. Many-to-one connections, the ability to say, request a pile of resources one time and have many people help you. And again, that's in a storm event, but to bring it back to the question from Jackson in a blue sky, that's useful every single day, right? How do I get that resource roster that I rely on for my contractor workforce daily into my operations center, into my DCC or my OCC? And how can I let them help them help me rather than me doing that work, right? So that was part of this many-to-one concept as well. I'm going to pass it off to Jason. Jason's going to take us now to the current day and talk about some of the great things that's going on right now.
Thanks, Bill.
I'm next, in between.
My notes aren't coming up. So I'm going to start off by why this is still important. As Matt mentioned earlier, we did a whole bunch of surveys last year, and one of the big ones that we did was our Next Big Thing survey. And listening to our customers, we basically asked the question, how important is a resource sharing environment to you? And 85% of the respondents said that it was very important. So that shows, even though ARCOS, other companies, the trade organizations have been looking at this for decades, it's still a challenge. It's still one of the biggest challenges in the industry. So remember this morning when Bruce and Boogie talked about ARCOS's core values, taking on the industry's biggest challenge, and we feel we're in the right place and we're making really good progress with this, and we want to share that with you today. So I'm going to start by not really talking about just about what ARCOS is doing, but what other parts of the industry are doing.
Give it one more.
Yeah. Sorry, my notes are not showing up on the right page, so I'm going to wing it, so please forgive me. So we're going to talk about RampUp. So RampUp is a tool that's actually owned by EEI, but it's managed and supported by ARCOS. And what it does is it was rolled out in 2015, and it's now used by all the RMAGs for their regional mutual assistance events, as well as the ability to scale up towards an NRE, a national response event. And what it does is it eliminates a lot of the guesswork when it comes to matching requests with responses. It runs a calculation, computes an equitable share, so that allows the people who are manning the system, the RMAG leads, to fairly balance the resources based upon what's being requested. And it's being used a lot. There's roughly 30 to 40 RampUp events per year. And it's a great tool, and we're proud to be associated with it. Another industry-driven ongoing initiative to drive resource sharing is the SCE Common Roster. The SCE stands for the Southeastern Electric Exchange, and they're one of the oldest and largest RMAGs in the country. And the project's objective was to streamline the mutual assistance process by developing a standard format versus various disparate forms. So they received a lot of feedback from the RMAGs as well as other industry groups when trying to put together this standard roster. So they rolled it out in 2016. It contains a total of 37 different fields split between crew level attributes, crew member level attributes, and equipment attributes. Of those 37 fields, only 11 of them are actually required. All the others are optional. The SCE Common Roster template also uses some best practices like drop-downs to easily populate cells, but it also uses macros to help validate the data. The problem is, with having macros in the form sometimes makes it difficult to email it back and forth because spam filters sometimes don't like spreadsheets with macros in it. It does have a lot of fields, 37 fields in a spreadsheet is pretty wide. And if the person filling it out makes any minor change to it, it won't import into the system of record. So with all those, pros and cons, great concept, love to try to see the standardization of a template in industry, but it, has its shortcomings and hasn't been fully adopted by the industry. So looking at that, through our Resource Assist Advisory Council, which Jim's going to talk about in a little bit, what we did is we ran a project last year in 2021 where we asked members to provide us, hey, send us the roster that you're using. What are you sending out to contractors? What does it look like? So we received over a dozen different templates that represented 30 OPCOs, or more than 30 OPCOs, represented various regions across the country and also utilities of different sizes. And what we learned, or actually what our objectives were, was to find the similarities and differences, identify a core set of fields and other best practices so we can share this with the industry. So what we found is some templates, and the SCE Common Roster was included in that analysis. I'm sorry, was there a question? Oh, sorry. So what we found is some utilities actually had 63 fields. That was the largest template. The smallest template only had 10 fields. And there were all different breakdowns versus crew member, and crew level attributes. So the conclusion that we came to is that even the folks within the SCE weren't really using the SCE Common Roster for one reason or another. And it kind of set in my mind, at least, the idea of expecting all utilities to use a single roster is probably a pipe dream. That's not going to happen. So what a better solution would be is a flexible, adjustable, what we think of as a playbook, a set of rules and guidance and suggestions to get people talking the same language to make resource sharing easier. So now what I'm going to talk about are the different elements, bringing this all back to ARCOS, talk about the different elements of what we're calling the ARCOS resource sharing environment. And it starts at the bottom of the triangle with events. We introduced an event wrapper in ARCOS that allows us to bind the data to a date range. So when you're importing resources, building crews, doing all that, the events associated with it, which is very helpful for reporting and roll-up purposes, which you'll see at the top of the pyramid. The next layer is Resource Planner. That's a tool within the ARCOS platform that allows you to define resource needs in advance. It follows the same regional hierarchy that you have set up in ARCOS, so you can put in what your anticipated resource needs are for different resource types. And then as you begin to acquire those resources, you're able to view the deltas so you see where you're making progress or where you need to bring in additional resources. Moving up the ladder, we come to, oops, hit it again. We come to the Resource Assist, which has two components. It's the Resource Assist on the utility side and the contractor portal where the contractors go to import their data. And this is where the utilities are able to acquire their external resources. Another way that utilities acquire resources, but this is really for their internal resources, is through call-out, which most of you all know about. Then if I move to the other side of the triangle, that data is then able to be fed into directly from Resource Assist or call-out directly into Crew Manager. Think of Crew Manager as that, that virtual whiteboard where you can organize, manage your crews, take care of their lodging. So all of, what good, when you get those rosters, those spreadsheet, that data, getting it into a system of record where it can be managed, shared, worked on by multiple people, a lot more efficient than the old days of the whiteboards and the spreadsheets. And then on top of Crew Manager is another ARCOS application called SMART, which is the ability to real-time track the location of convoys as they're traveling to your property. It's a mobile app that acts as a GPS beacon so you can, see what their ETAs are, where are they in traffic. It eliminates a lot of phone calls back and forth and gives better situational awareness as to the resources that are on their way to your property. And then at the top, why everyone, why go through all this effort to automate all this data is so you're able to extract meaningful reports, to make sound business decision, share with executives, share with the utility commission, after the event, reconcile invoices, you all know the value of reporting. So I'm going to just take a minute to dive a little bit deeper into Resource Assist, because that's really the hub of this resource sharing environment. It's a solution that lets contractors or even other utilities fulfill resource requests digitally. So think no more emails, no more spreadsheets, and no more having to import those spreadsheets, because the data from RA, as I just mentioned, is pushed directly into Crew Manager. So not only can utilities work with their contractors online through a series of requests, fulfillment and acceptance, but they can also reach out to multiple contractors quickly and easily in limited, less number of transactions than hopping on the phone and making all those individual phone calls. And it provides the contractors with a no-cost portal where they're able to load in those resources. And as Bill mentioned, it's not just for storms, it's also very applicable for blue sky usage. The statistics that we're talking is between 20 to 60% plus of most utilities' daily workforces is contractor-based. If you talk about vegetation resources, it's probably closer to 100%. And Resource Assist combined with Crew Manager is a great way to work with those resources. So this slide just shows some of the headway that we're making. And I know Bruce shared some of this data this morning. I actually ran the report just the other day. We're up to almost 20,000 FTEs loaded into the portal from more than 220 different contracting companies. And those graphs just show the increase in the number of contractors and the increase of number of FTEs. So each time we onboard a new customer and they load in more of their contractors, these numbers continue to grow. So in terms of other things that are driving growth, and Jim's going to talk about the RA Advisory Council, we've gotten suggestions from our utility customers, contractors, through interviews, through the Idea Bank, through our professional services group at ARCOS. And we're continuing to add functionality and add ease of use to the tool. So in 2021, we rolled out over 10 individual enhancements, again, that were all customer-driven, voice of the customer, that are making the product better to continue to drive adoption.
Thank you. So Resource Assist Advisory Council. What is this? Everything that Jason's been talking about is what we're doing today, and we're looking the next phase of the future. But today, what are we doing to help streamline mutual assistance? I mean, if you think back into the 30s, getting mutual assistance, you typically called somebody. When they got there, you found out who you had. You didn't know how many you were getting, that they were coming. Over the years, it got better. Well, we're just continuing to improve that. The crews don't drive any faster. It's the fact that technology can help manage that process quicker, get you the rosters. So anyways, we brought together the Resource Advisory Council. What is it? It's a group of at least all our RA customers are invited. And what we do is we come in and we talk with them, and we have a monthly virtual call. During that call, we talk about a lot of different things. But really, what is the overall purpose? The purpose of it is really to network, to focus on sharing resources. And it's not only for contractors to utilities, but utilities to utilities. It's also to come up with best practices. For those who were at the presentation that Stephanie Mormon gave remotely, that particular presentation, she did something very similar with Chrissy Gorbett of PG&E in our second meeting, showing their best practice on how they do onboarding. So we do best practices. We also look at concerns. What's your concern with the solution? Is it something, solution or concern about something in the industry? How can we help you from a technical standpoint? The functionality. Is the functionality working as it says? Is there any little bumps in it? We want to bring that back. We have PJ, Hallie, Jason Singer, and myself. We coordinate the Resource Assist Advisory Council. And so we have representation from product, and then you get from the customer success. So we run that to bring forward their concerns, any functionality issues. We also talk about blue sky as well as events. Everybody thinks about resource sharing during an event, but it happens blue sky. I mean, I think Bruce mentioned that there's up to 60% contractors. Some areas are 100% or more. So it's not just storms anymore or events. And then, of course, they talk about the roadmap. Not that they have direct input to the roadmap, but they provide us solid feedback and direction, and then product takes that back, and they idea bank, throw it on the idea bank, get a vote, and see how it goes. So what's the participants? Well, as I mentioned, to participate, first of all, you have to be an RA customer, but we also look at it from the various stages. So if you purchase RA, please come to me and try to get on the team. We're more than welcome, because we look at those who have purchased but not implemented, those who have implemented, those who are in an implementation, and those who have been using it for a long time. With that total breadth, you get a great conversations in there. We try to record them once someone forgot to push the button, but we record those, and we take notes, and we make them available. So with that, I just want to give you a high level of the Resource Advisory Council. Again, you can talk to Jason, PJ, or myself if you're interested or you want to learn more. With that, I'll turn it back to Jason.
Sure. So what we're going to talk about next is ARCOS's vision around resource sharing. I know Matt's going to add more to it tomorrow when he talks about his general roadmap presentation. So I'm going to start off with what we're calling the vision statement. And we want to be known as the utility industry's standard resource acquisition and exchange platform. And I kind of picture it with, ARCOS as a centralized hub, and there's several different components that are going to help us achieve this vision. The first is the network effect. As you just heard, we already have 20,000 FTEs from 220 different contractors in the company. As we continue to grow that number, we're going to reach a tipping point where there's more people in the platform using the platform that are not, and we're going to leverage that to be able to drive the folks who aren't into using it by letting them hear from the folks that are the benefits and the productivity enhancements that they're getting from using it. And in order to help us get to that tipping point, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that the concept, at least, of that resource sharing playbook. That is a set of rules, a set of guidelines, a set of common languages that are going to aid utilities of different sizes, different locations, with different nomenclatures to be able to exchange resources more seamlessly. Because again, unless you keep it really, really simple, there's never going to be a standard common roster that's going to suit everyone's needs. There's always going to be that core set of attributes, and then those outliers or those additional values that we're going to need support. And the playbook is the way that we're going to make that happen, along with some back-end engineering, magic as well. Then, as part of our, again, to get to this vision, we're going to need to add some automation or predictive analysis to the system. There's a lot of advancements made, in that area. Matt Abbott, from his previous experience, brings a lot of that to ARCOS, and it's the wave of the future. So, not just being able to seamlessly exchange resources, but also know how many resources do we need or where do we need them, being able to leverage data from past storms to make better and more intelligent decisions. And then finally, I talked earlier about ramp-up, and I listed here as ramp-up integration. But it's not really ramp-up integration that we're after. The way I see it is, if you're impacted by a storm and you're using ramp-up, and you get matched with 10, 15, 20 responding utilities or contractors, you then have to get on the phone, call every single one, email them your template. They got to fill out the template, send it back to you. Then they send back a second or a third version because it keeps changing. And then you have to import it into the system. And we've heard from some customers that 80 to 90% of the rosters that they get don't import into the system on the first try because the column headers are messed up or someone cut and pasted incorrectly. We can avoid all that with ARCOS. So think of ramp up as where ramp up ends, that's where ARCOS and Resource Assist can take over. And then for the actual roadmap itself, at least from the product perspective, and then Bill's going to talk about some more strategic type roadmap items. We break it down into the now, the next, and the later. So for the now, we're still, finishing up some of those usability enhancements that we started in 2021. That was the list that I showed earlier in my deck, where there's like 10, 12 enhancements. A lot of it was around the contractor portal, where we're listening to what the utilities are saying, or we're interviewing contractors, and we're making it better for everyone. After that, the next project that we're going to embark on is what we're calling the unification of RA and RA Lite. RA is super powerful. RA Lite is more flexible, especially when it comes to point or just-in-time needs. Makes it a lot easier to connect with a contractor or provider that you've never worked with before. So by unifying them, we're going to give you the best of both worlds. And then after that, we're really going to work on that standardized resource sharing. So that's that back-end piece that complements the playbook, where think of, for those of you who are familiar with Crew Manager, think of a resource sharing perspective that's common across multiple schemas. And you add on to that some back-end mapping or a matrix of different terms or nomenclature. It takes a lot of that guesswork or that randomness out of the different formats, different templates. So we can, again, we're not going to drive a single template that's going to contain all the fields that you have to use. We're going to make a playbook so it's flexible, that you can pick and choose what you want to use, and the responders are playing from that same playbook, so they'll know how to respond. And then after we tackle that, that's when we're going to get into some of that automation, predictive analysis, artificial intelligence that I talked about earlier. And where we ultimately want to land is, we reached that tipping point, we had the network effect, we have it automated, we're integrated, we're working with ramp up, is to be able to, say it becomes, almost think of the Uber for contractors or Uber for contractor management, to make it a real seamless network where there's requesters and responders and they're matched up. But keeping in mind, we're always going to play by the rules of the RMAGs and, the APPA and the NRECA, where, it's not going to be, a free-for-all to acquire contractors. That's not our point. We want to play within the existing guidelines, and we've been doing that. We're working with the ramp-up team for a long time, but that's what I wanted to share as part of our vision for resource sharing here at ARCOS. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Bill to share more of his vision.
Thanks, Jason. Yeah, one of the things Jason mentioned was getting to that point where we reach that tipping point. And I think his latest number showed almost 20,000 FTE resources, I think split between mostly skilled line resources as well as vegetation resources in RA today, as we sit right now. One of the things I mentioned was your challenging questions and the challenging questions we receive from your industry groups that help spur us and drive us forward. Several years ago, I was asked a question by, some of you may know Chris Eisenbray from EEI. He was doing a presentation and he said, well, kind of how many line resources are there, skilled line resources are there in North America? It's a great question, but we took away from that, well, ARCOS could probably know that. And that's where we're headed with this tipping point. What we want to do is look at a package of features or a package of value we can deliver to contract companies to walk up to this portal and engage with it on their own. So as we reach that tipping point and we kind of go over that hill, people are getting involved with Resource Assist on the contractor portal side without ever having to have gone through an ARCOS implementation with you all. We love it when you do. You guys have actually helped us drive that graph northward. But we want to get to the point where we've got folks that you've never done business with yet engaging with that contractor portal and putting themselves into that contractor database. To do that, we want to introduce features like contracts and financials. They have their own financials, as we heard in that great Volt presentation today. So can we help them organize some of that they have to organize to provide you? Independent registration, as I said, kind of walk up to the counter and register themselves. Let contractors fill their own demand. So many of the contract providers you work with have subcontractors or have some of them go to a union hall or several union halls to fill requests that you make of them. So can ARCOS provide some of that great call-out crew management capability to them to let them reach out to their partners and fill your requests? And one of the themes we always, back to Patrick from Jackson, we want to make sure this is useful every single day. So they're getting value not just in a major storm response, But when they've got that native contract workforce that works alongside your crews each day, they can use that contractor portal seamlessly. To go a little bit further, Jason mentioned predictive analytics. So one interesting piece of predictive analytics is when we reach that tipping point and we have every skilled line resource in North America and every vegetation contractor in North America, or most of them in a resource assist system, can we begin to do things that we can't necessarily do today? So would it be interesting for you to know more about what goes on maybe outside your four walls that ARCOS helps with, and maybe outside of your RMAG that Ramp Up helps with, but across the nation? What if we had an event here on the West Coast while something was happening to the Mid-Atlantic? And ARCOS would have a chance to basically show you, and maybe with some great analytics, what's happened in the past when a situation like that has occurred. What can you expect to happen when you reach out for resources? Will you get them? What do ARCOS metrics think is going to happen when you ask for 500 skilled line overhead resources? We want to chase that NRE and RMAG integration with Ramp Up, as Jason was talking about. And again, not because it's just because we want to put that on the wall, but because it's all part of a seamless process. That right now you have to sort of stop that process and break out and go to phones and emails and spreadsheets. We want to pair resource information with decision tools within your four walls. So as those folks, as you're requesting and as those requests are being confirmed, as those convoys are driving in, we know things about their drive time. We know your likelihood to get more if you were to request more. So can we provide those analytics, call them the decision tools, decision widgets, that you could take advantage of during an event to decide whether you want to request more now, wait, or release. And finally, expanding that database to be like non-human resources. I think we had a presentation earlier talk about equipment. So it could be spares. Some of you I know have been involved with spares programs, borrowing transformers. That could all be part of that single resource marketplace. I would like, before I hand it over to Jim, ask one question to the audience. If we get to that point where we have from 20,000 resources to say 100,000 skilled line resources and 200,000 skilled veg resources that could potentially be mobilized all over North America, how many of you would be willing to do business with a contract partner in that portal that you've never contracted with before? We got at least one hand. And I know that's like subject to legal, I'd have to get 1 million signatures, totally get it. But theoretically, if we could jump those hurdles, would that work? Okay, a couple hands, great. Yeah, curious for any feedback on that as well.
Is there a list of what contractors are using resource assist where we can scale up little by little with 1 or 2 contractors in our service territory?
Sure.
Yeah, so when contractors,
The question was, for those in the back who didn't hear,
Oh, okay.
is there a list that provides you at least how many contractors, maybe in what area, regions like that, and who they are?
yeah, so when you go to add new contractors, there's a search functionality. So if a contractor creates their profile as public, you're able to search them by geographic radius, by name, to see who's in there already, so you can add them to your connections.
Great question. Another question.
Well, Kimberly was going to ask this question, but she was a little skittish, so.
And that's Luke from TICO.
Yeah. But basically, we're not allowed to use any contractors on our system that are not ISN Net World, have an A or B rating, safety rating. Are all these contractors that are in that system up to date on ISN Net World and meet those requirements?
That's a requirement that we do not ask for. It's something that potentially could be put in there if the industry wants it, but I'll let Jason put it. It's not in there now.
Yeah, no, it's not a required, checkbox, but there is the ability for the contractor to do a blurb about their qualifications. So if they do hold certain qualifications, they would list that in their profile.
And that's potentially something also that if there's value there, we could do that verification, right? So we could help with that verification. So when you see them in ARCOS, not only have they checked the box, but we've verified it. Yep, great. That's a great idea. Any others?
Question back.
One back there.
So Matt Moxley for Power and Light. So is there a way by contractor to distinguish their IOU resources versus non-IOU? Because that becomes an issue during storms when you're making requests.
That's a great question.
I may ask PJ on that, but contractors are really going in there on their own. They're not going to be offering up, resources that are working at a utility. So totally trying to stay within the confines of the existing mutual assistance best practices. So contractors are really only offering up their own folks. Anything through mutual assistance, that roster can be exchanged through the Resource Assist platform, but that would be after the matching occurred. It wouldn't be before it.
We do have a disclaimer in there, not a disclaimer, but a statement that about RMAG following the RMAG process. So when a request comes out under RA, that statement's there to help encourage everybody to play according to the rules.
Great. Ann, SDG&E.
First, I want to thank you guys because I don't know how many of your 60% new attendees in the audience realize the level of experience that's standing on the stage and the people that have been working this problem in this country. So thank you for your service to our industry because it's been a long road, right, to get where we are today, and I think we should celebrate that. When you mentioned Chris Eisenberry at EEI, when Jason was still with Rod and Jim was co-chair of all the mutual assistance in the United States, and all of this was right after Sandy, and we were cranking up trying to figure all this big puzzle out. One of the suggestions we made through, I think, Gail at EEI was every utility in this country does not have the staffing to sit there like Ronnie's doing down at TICO right now and find every contractor and bring them in and teach them how to use a portal. And if we can find, whether it's ARCOS EEI, a partnership with APPA and all of that, there is a finite number of contractors in the United States. And every utility should not be going it alone, investing the staff time to build this thing when we could come together as an industry and a nation. And when Sandy happened and EEI was holding national calls, there was an original call, and I don't remember, Jim, what it was, but they asked for like 80,000 qualified electrical workers, right? QEW, IBEW, whatever guys. And the first question on that call was, how many do we have in the United States of America? And I think we finally find out it was like 36,000 or 42,000. So you're more than halfway there maybe, right? With 20,000 in there, right? But I also, Jim, would encourage you, we're looking at RA. We haven't purchased it. We haven't even dove into Resource Assist Lite yet. But to your users group, for those of us that are maybe potential future users of it, to be listening on those calls and learning at what point do we want to wade into that pool might be super helpful, even if it's just one meeting that you invite us to where we can meet others and ask questions. So I'd encourage you to do that. But Bill, I'd really encourage you, how do we get it where we're not all going it alone to get these Hinkles and McCoy is Hinkles and McCoy. I don't care if you're in New Hampshire or San Diego. They can only have a finite number of humans working under their logo, right? Where maybe it would make it easier on all utilities if there was one process to get this built rather than 200 member companies plus co-ops plus trying to build this thing out. Just food for thought.
No, I
Thanks.
completely agree. Thank you. Great feedback. Thank you.
We're running out of time. If you have any additional questions, well, one more from Matt, and then we'll wrap. Nope. Well, you can ask us later then. All right.
Okay.
All right. Let me.
Ask later because it has to deal with brokers and how the tool handles that, and that may be a longer discussion.
We'll talk about that, about brokers and everything. We've looked at that. So real quick, we're wrapping this up. We want to let you know we're very serious about helping streamline the resources that you share. On here are some of the presentations that we have during the conference that are about resource sharing. A couple of them we already did. We're actually done Dan Ballstead did some training sessions. Stephanie Mormon did the operating.
Onboarding.
Thank you.
Contractors.
Yeah, see, senior takes a little while with the eyes. And there's a couple more. So look at that. Our next slide is for QA, which we've asked a lot, and we appreciate it. Sorry we ran over. I know Danny's going to yell at us later. Bruce is going to take 2 drink tickets from us. 3.
3. Oh, ooch.
Thank you very much on behalf of all of us.
Thank you.
Would never yell at you. Okay, thanks. Hey, folks, I just want to release you for another break, but the breakout sessions, the last 2 series of them for the day, start at 3 o'clock, and they'll start on time because we have a big night ahead of us. So, you know, let's all go ask Andrea. Where's the chocolate? I know, we should have snacks today. There should have been snacks. So you got 9 minutes. Check your schedule for where you want to be at 3, where you want to be at 4. Both of those sessions will be in the A and B room, and we'll be back here tonight at 6:30 in this room, okay?